There's a fire that lives inside every one of us. Not the poetic kind. Not the gentle candlelight people romanticize. I'm talking about the violent blaze. The one that roars in your chest when the world presses you, insults you, doubts you, underestimates you. The one that whispers, destroy what stands in your way. The one that kept you alive when nothing else did. Most people fear that fire. You learn to survive by walking straight into it. But survival and mastery are not the same thing. And the years have revealed a hard truth. The fire that once carried you will eventually consume you if you do not rise above it. GrimFace teaches this brutally because it is brutal. Phase 1. The fire that saves you. In the early phases of life, when you're broken, hungry, tired, overlooked, you need that wildfire. You need the rage. You need the chaos. You need the part of you that doesn't care about consequences, because consequences already broke you long ago. In that season, the darkness inside you is not the enemy. It is the armor. It is the sword. It is the animal instinct that pushes you to keep moving when logic would beg you to stop. You stumble. You fail. You bleed. But every setback becomes a lesson carved into your bones. You learn through wreckage. You grow through ruin. Every mistake becomes a teacher. Every crash becomes a classroom. You become something the world can't easily predict or control. But understand this clearly. The darkness is meant to be outgrown. It is not meant to be permanent. You were never supposed to stay in phase 1 forever. Phase 2. The fire that tests you. There comes a point when the chaos that once fueled you begins demanding a price. Your impulsiveness becomes costly. Your reactions become liabilities. Your emotions start sabotaging the future you're building. This is where most people fall apart. They misinterpret the heat inside them as identity instead of energy. They think the fire is who they are, not realizing it was only who they needed to be for a time. You begin to see the truth. The fire is not the threat. Your lack of control is. And so you enter the next phase. The phase of friction, pressure, and painful growth. You begin to confront the reality that if you don't tame this force within you, it will cost you everything you're trying to build. You notice the patterns. The people who once respected your intensity now fear your instability. The opportunities you once attracted now slip away because of inconsistent discipline. The world starts treating your fire not as power, but as volatility. This is where life presents you with a choice. Continue burning everything around you, or learn to wield the heat like a blade. Phase 3. The fire that must bow. The moment you choose to transcend your old self is the moment the entire world changes its posture toward you. You stop relying on emotional explosions. You stop chasing temporary highs. You stop living as a reaction and start living as an intention. You feel the fire rising inside you, but for the first time, you make it kneel. This phase requires brutality, not toward the world, but toward yourself. You must kill the worst parts of you without hesitation. The addictions, the habits, the poison you kept swallowing to numb your potential. You put down what was putting you down. You bury what was burying you. You strip away what has been stripping you. You replace it with the antidote: structure, discipline, deliberate action, and silence so powerful it intimidates the noise around you. This is when the transformation becomes visible. Your presence changes, your decisions sharpen, your energy stabilizes. Your aura hardens into something undeniable. People start watching you differently. Some fear the change, some respect it, some envy it, but none can explain it, because they don't realize what really happened. You hit the switch. You locked in. You stopped running from the fire and made it your servant. Phase 4. The fire that builds empires. When you master the fire, you become someone unrecognizable to your former self. Your movements become precise. Your actions become intentional. Your mind becomes silent and strategic. You stop acting out of pain. You start acting out of purpose. You stop reacting emotionally. You start responding intelligently. You stop craving escape. You start craving evolution. Your discipline becomes your identity. Your consistency becomes your weapon. Your silence becomes your strength. People look at you and whisper, "How did he do it? How did she change so drastically? What happened to them?" What happened is that you finally understood the truth. Power doesn't come from the fire. Power comes from the one who commands it. You became unafraid of your potential. You became unafraid of the responsibility that comes with greatness. You became unafraid of the work, the isolation, the discipline, the sacrifice. You became the version of yourself that others only meet in dreams. Phase 5. The fire that others can feel. Now, when you walk into a room, people don't see flames. They sense pressure. They sense control. They sense a human being who has conquered themselves. This is the highest level. The level where your presence is louder than your voice. The level where your restraint is more intimidating than your aggression. The level where you don't need to prove anything, because your life speaks for itself. You carry yourself like someone who has burned, rebuilt, refined, and ascended. Your past doesn't control you. Your trauma doesn't define you. Your darkness doesn't own you. It works for you. You learned what most people never will. Success isn't about having a fire. It's about having the courage to refine it and the discipline to control it. You became the antidote to your old life. A walking reminder that transformation is not magic. It is brutality, consistency, and absolute self-command. Now that you understand the truth, the rise, the fall, the fire, the darkness, the turning point, you're standing at the edge of a choice most people will never make. You've seen what the untamed fire can do. You've felt the cost of living without control. You've tasted the power that comes when you finally decide to master yourself instead of letting your impulses rule your life. But knowing the path is worthless unless you walk it. Transformation isn't built on emotion. It's built on structure. If you want to become the version of yourself who commands the fire, not the one consumed by it, you need a blueprint, a system, a way to turn all this raw understanding into daily action. So now the question becomes, how do you actually do it? How do you take this darkness, this fire, this potential, and shape it into something unstoppable and controlled? These 5 steps are the exact process. They are not theories. They are not feel-good concepts. They are the precise framework that turns inner chaos into calculated power. Let's break them down. Let's take the fire and forge it into form. Step 1. Confront the chaos. Before you can tame the fire within, you must be willing to walk into the furnace of your own truth. Most people never master themselves for one reason. They refuse to face who they actually are. They cling to the image they project, the excuses they've perfected, the lies they've polished into identity. And as long as they protect their illusions, they remain powerless, slaves to impulses they pretend not to have. But if you're serious about becoming the person who commands their inner fire, you must begin with confrontation. Brutal, unfiltered, merciless confrontation. This step is the hardest because it strips away comfort. It forces you to sit alone with the behaviors you hide, the triggers you deny, the wounds you numb, the decisions you regret. It forces you to admit that the chaos in your life wasn't random. It was engineered by patterns you refused to outgrow. You must look at yourself the same way a warrior studies the battlefield, without emotion, without bias, without fear. Ask the questions most people run from. Why do I react the way I do? What situations ignite the worst version of me? What addiction do I keep feeding? Because it helps me escape responsibility. What habits are silently draining the strength I pretend to have? What am I using as a crutch instead of facing my life head on? Write the answers down. Not the pretty answers, the real ones. The answers that make your stomach tighten, that make your ego twitch, that make your pride feel threatened. Those are the truths that matter. Those are the truths that build the foundation of mastery. You see, the chaos inside you isn't the enemy. It's the map. It's the blueprint of every wound you've ignored, every emotion you refuse to process, every decision you made while asleep to your own potential. When you study your chaos, you learn where your fire leaks, where your discipline collapses, where your mind betrays you. Most people want success without accountability. They want strength without sacrifice. They want power without introspection. But this step forces the question: how can you command the fire within if you don't even understand its origin? This is where the real work begins. This is where you dig up the internal roots of your anger, insecurity, fear, self-sabotage, or emotional instability. Not to drown in them, but to expose them. Because what you expose, you can change. And what you refuse to look at will own you for life. Understand this deeply. Your potential isn't blocked by outside forces. Your greatness isn't chained by the world. Your progress isn't limited by resources, timing, or circumstances. Your greatest obstacle has always been the internal storm you were too afraid to name. But when you confront it, when you examine it without flinching, you take back the authority you've given your pain for years. The fire starts to shift. It stops raging blindly. It begins listening to you. It begins responding to you. This step is the gateway. It separates those who talk about change from those who actually transform. It marks the moment where you stop lying to yourself and start rebuilding yourself. And the truth is simple. If you skip this step, everything else collapses. If you refuse to confront your chaos, it will follow you into every future plan, every new habit, every new identity. It will poison your growth quietly, subtly, relentlessly. But if you face it, if you dissect it, if you stare it down without blinking, then and only then do you become worthy of the path ahead. You cannot tame the fire by pretending it isn't there. You tame it by looking directly into its flames and saying, "I see you. I'm not afraid of you. And from this point forward, you serve me." This is where your transformation begins. This is where the real you wakes up. This is where the old you dies, and the fire within finally meets its master. Step 2. Destroy what destroys you. Once you identify the chaos, the next step is the execution. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. This is the part where you kill the things inside your life that are killing you. Without mercy, without negotiation, without delay. Most people never evolve because they try to manage their demons instead of eliminating them. They treat their addictions like pets. They treat their bad habits like inconveniences. They treat their toxic environments like unavoidable circumstances. They say things like, "I'll fix it later. I can handle it. I'll cut back." I'll stop when life gets easier. But these are the last words spoken before a person descends into a life of quiet, permanent mediocrity. You cannot rise while gripping the very chains that pulled you down. What you tolerate will eventually dominate you. Destroying what destroys you is the phase of brutality. This is where you detach from comfort and step into the violent clarity required for transformation. Start here. List every habit, behavior, substance, environment, and person that weakens your discipline, destabilizes your mind, or drains your potential. Be viciously specific. The late-night addictions you justify, the content you consume that dulls your focus, the people who encourage your worst impulses, the routines that suffocate your ambition, the comfort systems you hide behind, the escapes you use as bandages on deeper wounds. Then understand something painfully true. You cannot outgrow what you refuse to outcut. Breaking your old patterns is not an emotional decision. It's a strategic strike. A surgical removal of everything that rots your strength from the inside. This means cutting off relationships that thrive on your weakness, restricting access to environments that feed your chaos, removing vices that numb your progress, destroying habits that sabotage consistency, replacing destructive impulses with constructive rituals. You don't have to hate something to remove it. You just have to recognize that it does not belong in the life you are building. This step requires a new type of honesty. The understanding that some parts of your old identity cannot survive if the new one is to be born. The version of you that clings to old pleasures, old escapes, old chaos. That version must die. This is the moment you become dangerous in the right way. Not because you are explosive, but because you are intentional. Not because you act on impulse, but because you choose with precision. Not because you destroy out of anger, but because you destroy out of necessity. Understand the psychology here. Your brain is addicted to what is familiar, even if it hurts you. Your mind will try to negotiate. It will whisper excuses, justifications, fantasies. It will promise you that you can keep your bad habits and still evolve. It will try to bargain for your comfort, even when comfort is the enemy. This is why this step demands ruthlessness. You cannot reason with your old self. You cannot gently retire your vices. They will not leave quietly. You must rip them out by the root. Yes, it will feel like loss. Yes, it will feel like withdrawal. Yes, it will feel like losing pieces of your identity. But those pieces were never you. They were the chains that disguised themselves as coping mechanisms. And something incredible happens the moment you destroy what destroys you. Your energy returns. Your mind clears. Your discipline strengthens. Your confidence rebuilds. Your fire starts burning clean, sharp, and controlled. This step is where you reclaim the authority you gave away to weakness. This step is where you prove you're ready to become the version of yourself that discipline demands. This step is where you learn the ancient truth. You cannot build a new life with the tools that destroyed the old one. When you remove the poison, you create the space for the antidote to work. When you eliminate what drags you down, you create room for what elevates you. When you kill the parts of you that were built in survival mode, you make space for the parts that thrive in mastery mode. And most importantly, when you destroy what destroys you, the fire inside finally stops burning you and starts burning for you. This is not the end of your transformation. This is the cleansing, the purge, the quiet violence required to prepare you for what comes next. You have removed the poison. Now, it's time to build the antidote. Step 3. Build the antidote. Discipline, structure, purpose. Once you have confronted the chaos and destroyed what destroys you, you enter a phase most people never reach, the phase of reconstruction. This is where the old identity is dead, but the new identity is not yet fully formed. It is a dangerous, fragile moment. Because when you remove the poison, your mind craves something to fill the empty space. If you don't choose the antidote, you will unconsciously choose another toxin. This is why step 3 matters. This is where you build the framework that supports the next evolution of who you are becoming. Not through motivation, not through emotion, but through discipline, structure, and purpose. Without this step, the fire inside you becomes unstable. Without this step, your old habits will crawl back into your life through the cracks. Without this step, you will fall into the same patterns you fought so hard to escape. Building the antidote is about creating the environment, the systems, and the daily rituals that lock your new identity into place. Discipline, the first pillar of rebirth. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is alignment. The daily choice to act in agreement with your future rather than your feelings. Most people never build discipline because they wait to feel like doing the work. But emotion is the most unreliable fuel on earth. If your growth depends on feeling ready, you will never change. Discipline means doing what your old self avoided, showing up when no one claps, working when you're tired, not inspired, choosing long-term strength over short-term comfort, maintaining standards even when the world offers excuses. Discipline is the antidote to impulse. It stabilizes the fire. It takes raw potential and turns it into something lethal. Discipline is what separates a life of regret from a life of authority. Structure, the armor that protects your identity. Once discipline begins to form, you need structure, because your environment is more powerful than your willpower. Structure is the fortress you build around your life. It prevents chaos from crawling back in. It keeps your ambition protected. It ensures that even on your worst days, you don't drift into old ways. Structure looks like a morning routine that sets your mind on fire. A diet that stabilizes your energy instead of crashing it. A schedule that prioritizes growth, not distraction. A workspace that supports focus and execution. Boundaries that protect your time, your mental health, your attention. Structure is not meant to restrict you. It is meant to free you. Free you from decision fatigue. Free you from temptation. Free you from the chaos that once ruled you. Structure ensures that your fire is contained, directed, and useful. Not scattered, not reckless, not destructive. Purpose, the direction of your power. You can tame the fire. You can contain it. But if you do not aim it, it will eventually aim itself at the wrong targets again. Purpose is the compass that tells your fire where to burn. It is the reason behind the discipline. It is the meaning behind the sacrifice. It is the vision strong enough to pull you out of bed when your body begs to stay asleep. Purpose doesn't have to be lofty. It just has to be real. Purpose can be becoming a man or woman your younger self would fearlessly respect. Building a future your family can stand on. Creating a life where you are no longer controlled by impulses or pain. Becoming financially, mentally, and emotionally untouchable. Fulfilling a mission bigger than your comfort. Purpose is the antidote to emptiness. It transforms daily discipline from a burden into a necessity. It turns every sacrifice into strategy. It ensures you never drift aimlessly again. The antidote is a lifestyle, not a moment. Most people treat self-improvement like an event, something they do for a few days when motivation strikes. This is why they fall back into weakness the moment life gets heavy. But the antidote is not a moment. It is a lifestyle, a continuous decision to choose the future over the past, a commitment to align your identity with your actions every single day. The fire inside you becomes powerful only when it is surrounded by systems that maintain it. You do not want a fire that explodes. You want a fire that endures. A fire that heats your ambition, fuels your consistency, and strengthens your identity. Building the antidote is how you create that. This is where you stop surviving yourself and start mastering yourself. This is where your future stops being a fantasy and becomes a design. This is where the fire within stops burning wildly and begins burning with purpose, direction, and unstoppable force. Step 4. Train the fire to serve you, not consume you. Most people spend their entire lives terrified of their own intensity. They fear their ambition because it feels overwhelming. They fear their rage because it feels uncontrollable. They fear their darkness because it exposes the truth they work so hard to bury. But here's the secret. You cannot become powerful by killing your fire. You only become powerful when you train it. By step 4, you've removed your poisons. You've built the structure. You've established discipline. Now you must learn the art of mastery, making your inner fire obey you. Because fire is never neutral. Either it burns you alive, or it forges you into something indestructible. The difference is control. Emotional mastery, the core of true power. Your emotions are not the enemy. Your lack of command over them is. When you're reactive, you give your power away to everything around you. A comment, a situation, a bad day, an opinion, a fear, a memory, a moment. You become a puppet pulled by invisible strings. But when you learn to sit calmly in the presence of pressure, when you learn to breathe through the heat instead of exploding with it, you become something rare in this world, a person who cannot be manipulated. Emotional mastery means you no longer panic in chaos. You no longer collapse under stress. You no longer react based on fear or impulse. You no longer let tiny triggers ignite massive responses. Instead, you respond with precision, intention, and clarity. Your fire becomes a weapon, not a wildfire. Channeling intensity into action. Intensity is a gift when controlled, a curse when unleashed blindly. Most people run from high-intensity feelings because they don't know how to direct them. Instead of using their fire to build, they waste it on overthinking, self-doubt, conflict, and self-sabotage. Training the fire means turning intensity into fuel. Anger becomes focus. Pain becomes drive. Frustration becomes strategy. Fear becomes awareness. Pressure becomes sharpening. The emotion doesn't disappear. You simply redirect it. When others are overwhelmed by their feelings, you weaponize yours. This is where your darkness becomes utility. This is where your fire becomes purpose. Staying calm when others collapse. In this phase, something shifts inside you. Your mind becomes harder to shake. Your emotions become slower to ignite. Your reactions become quieter, sharper, more deliberate. And this calmness becomes your advantage. Because when the world around you spirals, you stay grounded. When others choke under uncertainty, you stay clear. When chaos erupts, you see opportunity where they see threat. People start to sense your stability. They feel your control. They recognize your presence as something uncommon, intimidating, and deeply respected. This is what makes you dangerous. You don't just have fire, you have poise. A combination most people can't even imagine. Becoming strategically unpredictable. A person who trains their fire becomes impossible to read, not because they are mysterious, but because they respond from a place of strategy, not emotion. You don't react instantly. You observe. You assess. You calculate your next move like a quiet tactician. Your silence becomes unsettling. Your stillness becomes powerful. Your restraint becomes a message louder than any outburst. And in a world addicted to emotional impulsiveness, your ability to remain centered becomes your greatest edge. People won't understand how you do it. How you stay calm when they would shatter. How you stay logical when they would scream. How you stay grounded when they would drown. They will call you cold, detached, unbothered. But you know the truth. You are trained. You are composed. You are in command of the fire they can't even face. The fire becomes your ally. At this stage, the fire within no longer feels like a threat. It feels like a companion, a force that stands beside you, not against you. You can feel the heat, but it no longer burns uncontrollably. You can sense the darkness, but it no longer owns your decisions. You can summon your intensity, but only when necessary, only with intention. This is the phase where your inner world stabilizes, where your strength becomes consistent, where your mind becomes unshakable, where your energy no longer spikes and crashes. It flows with precision. Your fire becomes a tool, a resource, a controlled force you unleash only when the mission demands it. This is what true power looks like. Not chaos, not rage, not emotional explosions. True power is controlled intensity. True power is disciplined fire. True power is a warrior who can stand in flames and not flinch. You are ready for step 5 when your fire no longer frightens you, when your darkness no longer blinds you, when your emotions no longer command you, but obey you. When that day comes, you will understand the final truth. Mastery is not about extinguishing the fire. It is about becoming the one who decides exactly how and when it burns. Step 5 will complete that transformation. Step 5. Lock in and become unmistakable. This is the step where everything changes. Not externally, but internally. This is not about motivation. This is not about discipline alone. This is about identity. About becoming the version of yourself that no longer negotiates with weakness, hesitation, or fear. By the time you reach step 5, the old you has already died. Your poisons are gone. Your chaos is confronted. Your fire is trained. Your structure is built. Now comes the part that terrifies most people. Becoming the person you were always meant to be. This step demands a final, irreversible switch. A commitment so absolute it feels like crossing a line you can never return from. Because that is exactly what it is. Identity. Shift. The birth of a new force. Most people fail because they try to change habits without changing identity. They try to act disciplined while still calling themselves undisciplined. They try to achieve greatness while still seeing themselves as broken. They try to build a new life using the mindset of the old one. But step 5 destroys that contradiction. Here, you lock in, not for a day, not for a week, but for life. This is where you stop trying to become powerful and start being powerful. This is where you stop hoping for transformation and start embodying it. This is where you stop waiting for permission and start declaring authority. Identity is the strongest force in human psychology. When you shift it, everything else follows. Your actions, your habits, your energy, your presence, your destiny. You no longer see yourself as someone rising from the ashes. You see yourself as someone forging the future. That distinction changes everything. Consistency without apology. When you lock in, something extraordinary happens. You stop caring about how others perceive your discipline. People will call you obsessed, cold, different, distant, focused to a degree they can't comprehend. Understand something. The moment you evolve past the version of yourself they once knew, they will interpret your growth as arrogance, your consistency as madness, your silence as threat. Let them. Because step 5 is the phase where you stop bending your life to fit the expectations of people who have no intention of growing themselves. At this stage, your commitment to your future becomes non-negotiable. Not because you're avoiding failure, but because you're finally aligned with the person you were born to become. You don't need motivation. You don't need approval. You don't need applause. You execute because it is who you are now. In the end, everything you've learned, all the fire, all the darkness, all the discipline, comes down to one truth. No one is coming to save you. Not your past, not your pain, not your excuses, not your potential, not your hopes, your dreams, your fantasies. Only you. You are the one who confronts the chaos. You are the one who destroys what destroys you. You are the one who builds the antidote when the world hands you poison. You are the one who trains the fire instead of letting it devour you. You are the one who locks in when everyone around you drifts further into weakness. And when you finally understand this, when you internalize it so deeply that it becomes marrow in your bones, you stop living like a victim of your circumstances and start living like the architect of your future. This path is not easy. It's not glamorous. It's not for the faint, the fragile, or the comfortable. This path demands a self-confrontation so brutal, most people would rather destroy themselves slowly than face it once. It demands sacrifices that will make people question your motives. It demands isolation that will make others uncomfortable. It demands a level of self-respect that will expose the insecurities of those who've never dared to evolve. But for you, this isn't a burden. This is a calling, a responsibility, a duty to the highest version of who you can become. Because once you've walked through your own fire, once you've stood in the center of the inferno and refused to flinch, you understand something the average mind cannot even fathom. There is nothing in this world more powerful than a human being who has mastered themselves. Not talent, not money, not privilege, not luck, not circumstance. Self-mastery is the final supremacy. And now you know how to build it. You know how to rise from the first spark of chaos to the full ignition of identity. You know the process. You know the cost. You know the reward. The question now is simple. Will you keep walking? Because the fire within you is awake. It is listening. It is waiting. Waiting to see if you will continue the transformation or fall back into the comforts that once controlled you. This is the fork in the road. This is the moment that determines the rest of your life. This is where you decide whether all of this becomes another burst of motivation or the beginning of a legacy. So choose. Choose the version of you that refuses to break. Choose the version of you that commands the flame without fear. Choose the version of you that others study, but never understand. Choose the version of you that steps into destiny instead of running from potential. And when you choose with both feet. Choose with your entire being. Choose like someone who is never going back. Because once you truly lock in, once you become the master of your fire, the world will never be able to ignore you again. This is your turning point. This is your evolution. This is the moment the old you is buried, and the real you finally steps forward. Now go. Control the fire. Shape your fate. Become the person they swear is impossible. This is your time. This is your power. This is your rise.